Já estava na hora de reativar esse canal, né, galera? E a gente vai reativar em grande estilo com uma entrevista exclusiva com ninguém menos que Andi Deris, vocalista do Helloween. Se liga! Fala, galera! Eu sou Igor Miranda e eu tô de volta pro YouTube. Alguns de vocês devem se lembrar que lá em 2019 eu lancei um canal aqui na plataforma, só que por uma série de motivos eu precisei parar e focar na minha praia, né, que é o texto escrito. Agora eu tô voltando, não só porque uma galera já estava me perguntando se eu iria voltar com o canal, muita gente queria que eu também fizesse essa transição para o vídeo, como também eu venho fazendo algumas entrevistas bem legais, e a primeira delas é a que vocês vão acompanhar agora, que é uma entrevista exclusiva com Andi Deris, vocalista do Helloween. O Andi está no Helloween desde 94, só que em 2016, como muitos de vocês já devem saber, rolou uma espécie de uma reunião que garantiu a volta de dois integrantes clássicos ao Helloween, o vocalista Michael Kiske e o guitarrista Kai Hansen, que também assume vocais. Dessa forma, o Helloween virou um septeto, porque ninguém saiu da banda, apenas voltaram, na verdade, dois integrantes antigos, clássicos da banda. Agora a gente tem Andi Deris e Michael Kiske no vocal, Kai Hansen, Michael Weikart e Sasha Gerstner nas guitarras, o Kai também assumindo o vocal eventualmente, Marcus Grosskopf no baixo e Danny Lobley na bateria. Esses caras fizeram uma turnê de reunião que rodou o mundo inteiro entre 2017 e 2019, inclusive com duas passagens pelo Brasil em 2017 e em 2019. E para sacramentar de vez essa reunião, esse momento aí de retorno de dois integrantes clássicos, eles resolveram gravar um álbum com músicas inéditas. Esse disco é homônimo, ele também se chama Helloween e vai ser lançado já nesta sexta-feira, dia 18 de junho. Foi aí que eu tive a oportunidade de conversar com o Andi Deris. A gente conversou não só sobre esse novo disco, como também a gente falou sobre essa nova fase da banda, essa interação que ele tem com os novos integrantes, né, novos velhos integrantes, por assim dizer. A gente focou, inclusive, na relação que ele tem com o Michael Kiske, que agora eles são meio que melhores amigos, o que é uma coisa muito legal de se ver. E, além de tudo isso, a gente fez comentários gerais aí sobre outros assuntos. A gente relembrou o período em que o Andi Deris gravou, junto com o Helloween, o álbum The Time of the Youth. A gente relembrou isso porque esse disco está chegando ao seu 25º aniversário de lançamento, já que ele saiu em 1996. E a gente também teve uma passagem ali bem interessante que a gente conversou sobre o Andre Matos, o vocalista do Angra, do Xamã, do Viper e de vários outros projetos que nos deixou há 2 anos, né? Faleceu há 2 anos. E ele tinha uma relação, né? O André tinha uma relação com o Helloween, inclusive com o Andi Deris, porque o Andi e o Michael Weikart participaram do DVD Ritual Live do Xamã, em 2003. Então a gente falou de tudo um pouco durante essa entrevista, né? Antes de partir para o bate-papo, só queria lembrar vocês que quem gosta do meu trabalho, quem quer passar a acompanhar os vídeos aqui na plataforma, não se esqueça de se inscrever no meu canal. E se você gostar desse vídeo, se você curtir o bate-papo, não se esqueça de deixar uma curtida e de deixar um comentário aí também. Quem me acompanha nas redes sociais sabe que eu estou sempre de olho, eu estou sempre interagindo com os comentários que a galera deixa. Então, esses comentários são sempre muito bem-vindos. Vamos lá? Na primeira pergunta que eu fiz para o Andi Deris, eu quis saber como é que ele estava se sentindo dias antes de lançar esse disco que já era tão aguardado e que inclusive teve um lançamento adiado, né? Esse álbum era para ter saído antes, ele acabou passando para 2021 por conta da pandemia. Se liga na resposta.
Well, as always, thrilled, but so far we have lots of people who told us their opinion, and we're all very happy that the direction is super great. So yeah, but even more than you can't wait to get out the final album, because the reaction for Skyfall and Fear of the Fallen were super great. So let's hope that the whole album is being accepted like that.
Eu também perguntei ao Andi como é que é lançar um disco durante uma pandemia, né? Já que não é possível fazer uma turnê, ao menos imediatamente, para promover esse trabalho, né? Como é que é lançar um álbum nesse mundo pandêmico? Se liga.
Well, strange, actually. We postponed the release for the album already, and we thought maybe we're happy and all this stuff will be over and finally release the album then, but we're still in the COVID times and people are still locked down in Germany, for example. I mean, the rest of the world is opening, but nevertheless, the whole ghost has not appeared yet. So the decision was made, well, then we should definitely release it now. As you know, we already postponed the whole world tour twice. Now we postponed it to 22. And I think now, if we cross fingers and hope that we're out on tour in 22. I think it's all right to release it now. People have a bit more time to listen to the album than normally before the world tour starts. But hey, these are trying times and you have to make exceptions, I think. So I personally think the decision was right to release it now and not wait any longer.
E ainda sobre pandemia, eu perguntei pro Andy o que ele espera desses shows que vão rolar em um mundo pós-pandêmico, por assim dizer. Durante o bate-papo ele se relembrou de algumas ocasiões onde ele tocou no Japão, especialmente das primeiras ocasiões onde ele se apresentou por lá, ainda na década de 90, onde o pessoal ficava todo sentadinho, todo comportadinho ali, e ele obviamente espera que não seja dessa forma quando o Helloween puder voltar a fazer shows.
Honestly, I mean, talking of you guys in Brazil, I cannot imagine that you are even more headbanging and partying, because Brazil is always the party country. So how could you top it? That's not possible, I think. No, but anyway, I think the whole world will be super relieved as well. You probably see it in the expressions of the people that they're just like finally relieved to get back to whatever is normal then. But having a chance to stand in the concert is probably the final occasion, the final feeling that tells you, okay, we're near to normality. So if you're shoulder to shoulder with a metal fan and you can bang again, then I think that's normality, I would say. Because if we are allowed to play concerts, means that the people are allowed to stand close together and sweat. For me, that would be the end of the pandemic, definitely. Otherwise, you never know. I mean, maybe we have to, in certain countries, we have to do compromises to only be allowed to let in 50% of the people or something like that. I hope not, because it's not the same, but at least it would be a concert. But it would remind me to Japan back in 1990 when I, the first time, was standing on stage in Japan and everything was seated. So you're in a metal concert, but you have to sit on a chair. And I do remember the people wanted to stand up, but there were these people from the concert halls and they had these big magazines in their hands. And whenever somebody tried to stand up, you've been hit on the head, like, sit down.
It would never work here in Brazil. We had that even at jazz concerts.
I don't think so, but sometimes that's my weird dream that we're back to this, that you're not allowed to stand up and that you have to have distance and you have to be seated. And that reminds me very much to Japan back in the 1990s. I just hope we don't have to do that shit again, because I see on your reaction, you say it would never work in Brazil. Actually, I could not imagine that it works anywhere in the world, but so far we see that people are very scared. So maybe because of a pandemic, people would do it. So you never know.
Já com relação a esse novo disco, eu pedi para o Andy definir em poucas palavras como é esse trabalho, né? Especialmente para os fãs que ainda não tiveram a oportunidade de escutar. Ele exaltou especialmente o aspecto sonoro, né? A sonoridade desse álbum que, na visão dele, resgata especialmente aquele timbre, aquela sonoridade dos álbuns do Helloween na década de 80. Lembrando que eles usaram o mesmo estúdio e até equipamentos bem antigos, o mesmo estúdio que eles gravaram os álbuns mais clássicos, aí, os primeiros Keepers e tudo mais. E ele exaltou que não só a sonoridade da década de 80 é representada nesse disco, como também tem muitos aspectos do Helloween dos anos 90 e dos anos 2000. Ele definiu como uma celebração geral de toda a carreira do Helloween.
For me, it's a nice journey, and I hope it's that impression that the people get when they listen to the album. It's a super nice journey through 3 decades of metal, and I think the production team combined it sound-wise. They found a sound that not only reminds you at the 80s, which it does, but also 90s and 2000, and everything is in there. The production for me, it sounds like the wow production from the 80s, which I never heard in the 80s. So it's never been that clear and never that transparent in the 80s as it is now. That's certainly thanks to the digital domain, but because of the drums and bass being recorded on analog, like they did back in the 80s, you have that mixture. So you have a digital when it comes to guitars and vocals, but you have all these analog drums, punch when it comes to bass drums and kicks and snares and bass guitar. I think that feeling combined is giving you something like extra spices. Some people will realize it and appreciate it, hopefully. Others will probably just listen to the album and say, I like the sound or I don't like the sound and don't care about productions. But for me as a musician and studio owner, it was a great journey. So when I listen to the album, I personally think I'm reminded to 80s, 90s, 2000, nowadays, everything is in there. I like that.
O Andi foi compositor de 5 músicas desse álbum, que são elas: Fear of the Fallen, Mass Pollution, Rise Without Chains, Cyanide e Best Time. Essa última com Sasha. Então eu perguntei para ele o que havia mudado nesse processo de composição, especialmente considerando ele enquanto vocalista e tendo que construir melodias, construir versos para acomodar as vozes do Michael Kiske e até do Kai Hansen.
You always have in the back of your mind, in the back of your head, you have this very freeing knowledge that you have now more singers who could help you. So when it comes to songwriting, there's always this hindering thing that you have to, as a vocalist, you have to sooner or later take in some breath, you know, and suddenly you are ending up with 2 or 3 singers, and you don't have to actually write melodies with pauses and breaks where people can take in air or whatever. You just don't give a shit. You just write it the way you would write it for melody played on guitar, or a guy who plays the violin, or a guy who sits on the piano. There is no need to interrupt the melody. Nobody has to take in a breath, and this is suddenly something new if you write vocal lines and you just think, I don't care. If I can sing it because I have to take in breath, well, then Michael goes on.
E como será que é gravar um álbum com 7 músicos? Um álbum de heavy metal com 7 músicos de uma formação que não é tão comum assim de se encontrar nas bandas por aí. Certamente é uma experiência nova para o Andi e eu pedi que ele compartilhasse as experiências principais, as visões principais que ele teve com relação a esse processo de se gravar com tanta gente ao mesmo tempo.
The recording process, I would not say it changes. As a matter of fact, it's just a matter of needing more time to check out what plays you, what play I, what plays in the matter, like for guitars, there are 3 guitarists, and you have to check out the balance. Is it great to have Waiki to the left and Kai to the right? Or is it a song that demands more precision, less rock and roll? Like the very fast shit is probably very good if you have a Sasha who is leading, because Sasha is that, the surgery guy. So he's very precise and everything. If it comes to the older stuff, you need more rock and roll. Even when it's fast, you need more dirt, like back in the days when they recorded Walls of Jericho, for example. Then it's definitely Waiki and Kai to bring across that 80s vibe. So now that we're having 3 guitarists, you definitely can change these different vibes of guitars. Sometimes it sounds really good if you have a dirty Kai to the left and a very precise Sasha to the right. Or Waiki to the left, Sasha to the right, as you are used to it, has always worked for the 90s sound, because to the left you have that rock and roll Waiki, and to the right you always had Sasha, who is very precise, which built a bridge from the 80s to nowadays. And you hear it. You check out much more. The combination of different guitarists. Same counts for the singers. Michael and I, probably we sang more or less the whole album each. And you just check out what don't I like, what do I like, or what is Michael feeling for that certain part. Is it his thing, or is it rather Andy? So at the end of the day, it was like a little puzzle game. Lots of fun, I have to say. Lots of laughs, but also big headaches sometimes after 10 or 12 hours in the studio, trying A, B, you sing I sing this, you sing that, I'm over you, you are under me, oh, no, I don't like that, vice versa, okay, try it again. It's very time consuming.
Aproveitando a vasta experiência que o Andi tem em estúdio, não só como músico, como também na função de produtor, ele até exalta durante essa entrevista aí que ele tem um estúdio, ele é dono de estúdio. Então eu quis saber dele como é que foi gravar com uns equipamentos tão antigos, né? Eles pegaram um equipamento bem vintage dos primeiros álbuns do Helloween, gravaram inclusive no estúdio dos primeiros álbuns do Helloween, esse novo trabalho. Então eu quis saber dele a perspectiva com relação a gravar em equipamentos vintage, analógicos, ainda que o processo tenha sido só parcialmente analógico. Ele deu ênfase ao uso da bateria de Ingo Schwitzenberg, o baterista original do Helloween, falecido em 1995. Eles não só gravaram um disco novo no estúdio clássico da banda, usado lá na década de 80, como resgataram também a bateria que Ingo usou nesses discos.
Well, concerning Ingo's drums, it's definitely worth it, because this drum from Sonor, the Sonorphonic Plus, it's called, Sonorphonic Plus, I think they don't build it since around 20 years. And this drum had a very specific kind of sound. And honestly, I think it's the perfect drum for 80s metal. It was still having that boom, which nowadays they all avoid in the industry. They don't want that boom. They want to have book, pack, talk, but no boom, king, cough. You know, this aftermath, which is actually when you put a compressor on it, it has that much more power. If there's no boom, you can compress the shit out of it. Nothing comes after it, if you compress it or not. But instead of a tuk, you have a tuk, and this is missing nowadays because they all want to be so precise. But with a Sonophonic Plus, you have that, and you have to live with it. So this, for me, gives that certain dirt, that certain something is behind the music that's always pumping. And
it's always heavy.
It's for my taste, it's more heavy, less precise, but more heavy. But with the, as mentioned earlier, with the digital production possibilities, you can actually limit this musically to a point where it's just sounding great without disturbing the music if you don't want it. Sometimes it's great, like Mass Pollution, for example. We more or less left it because it's so dirty, it's so real. It really gives you some constant pumping. Because the song is not a power metal song, but more or less a hard rock metal song, you have to have more pump to actually let it glue and blend with the rest of the songs. Otherwise, it would be too clean. And with the help of the digital domain, you even can control a Sonorphonic Plus from Ingo in a much better way, so it sounds modern. Still, you are reminded to back in the old days. And this is actually magic, I think. Honestly, I remember we just hooked it up for the pre-production in the studio, in the Chateau studio in Hamburg, which was the original studio where Ingo recorded all the albums. Like, not all the albums, but the Keeper 1, Keeper 2, Chameleon. And this time it was like, I don't know what's the right description. When you go into the studio and you have exactly the sound that you had like in the end of the 80s. It's a ghost in the room. And sometimes it's like you get these gooseflesh going on, you know, when you hear that sound suddenly with the old tape machines hooked up and everything is sounding the way it used to sound back in the days. And I remember 89 in the studio when they recorded The Keeper, or 88 actually. I already was there with Waiki, and I was still already recording in Hamburg with with Pink Cream 69 back in the days. But I remember the sound in the Chateau studio was so great that I would love to have exactly that sound on my production, but we couldn't afford it. was way too expensive, the Chateau studio, so we could never afford it with Pink Cream, because that was our first recording for our first album. So then, like two albums later, we used the Chateau studio as well with Pink Cream.
Bora falar de bromance? Eu aproveitei para perguntar pro Andy como é que tá essa relação com o Michael Kiske, porque nas entrevistas eles têm parecido tão leves juntos, né? Muitas entrevistas eles dão juntos. Quando estão separados, acabam falando um do outro, exaltando essa conexão que eles criaram tardiamente, infelizmente, né, como ele destaca aí, que demorou bastante tempo para eles se conectarem, finalmente desenvolverem uma amizade. Mas perguntei sobre essa química geral aí, essa amizade, onde eles se definem agora como melhores amigos e tudo mais. E até brinquei com o lance que alguns fãs falam, né, que rola uma espécie de um bromance entre eles. Se liga na resposta aí.
Well, it's definitely a spiritual romance, yeah. I mean, it's funny when you know somebody just from theory. I mean, he's always in your life because he was the former singer, and I had to sing his song. His songs always make me struggle. Always had not an easy life with singing his songs because he's just too good. So. What I mean, he's always been there with me, even though I did not know him personally. I mean, okay, we had a hello, how are you doing? That was the only thing we had, like back in 1990. We did not know each other, and personally, I know that I always was in Michael's mind as that guy who is now singing, he stole my job, blah, 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 which is not true. I did not steal his job. Actually, I was just asked to join because Michael was already gone. So I never felt like robbing or stealing a job because Mikey was actually saying goodbye to him, I think 4 days before he gave me a call and told me, now you finally go to Hamburg, meet with us and join this band now. Otherwise, I break up this band. That were his words. And I said, oh, well, okay. As always, he has smelled that there was something wrong with Pink Cream, so we had lots of trouble back exactly to the same time. So I said, you know what? I'm coming up to Hamburg. I take the train tomorrow. I make you listen to my demos, and then I decide. And well, to cut a long story short, I think Michael and I, we always had ourselves in a weird way parallel in our life, always, whatever we did. There was this asshole Andy who in Michael's eyes stole his job. And there was this Michael back in my mind, which I always was reminded with each and every tone I had to sing on I Want Out, or Future World, or Eagle Fly Free, or you name them. And I always had a hard time. But I never made a secret out of it. I told everybody in the press through all the decades that this is one of the best singers I've ever heard in the world, and I will never try to copy him, because how could you ever reach one of the greatest singers in that style? I can only lose. So I never tried to copy him. And that probably saved my neck. I just sang the way I felt, like singing like Andy. For a lot of people, it probably been disappointing when they wanted to listen to Michael Kiske songs, and certainly it's an Andy voice over it. Certainly it's a different interpretation, but you have to live with it, and that point of view that I did not like to copy a guy who's definitely way better in that way of singing than I will ever be. And Michael says the same to the people now, said he would never like to sing Andy songs because he just couldn't, period. It's too hard, it's too out of the stomach, too much rock and roll, and that's not Michael's style. And probably that's the reason that we, from beginning on, realized, wow, that blends perfectly. And he does not need to sing the shit he doesn't want to sing. That's my job. And I don't have to sing all these Michael Kiske tunes, which always gave me a heartache. Perfect combination, actually. But there you go. We've always been together the last 20 or 30 years. not in a positive and not in a negative way. Actually, it was just, you've been in each other's life, and suddenly you're there and have the time to sit down and the chance to sit down and get to know yourself like eye to eye. And you realize, wow, that ghost that was always with me is a real person, and I like that idiot. So you go like, okay, that's weird. So I remember we were here in Tenerife on the island, and in 2 or 3 days we were actually like little brothers. And I was super happy and excited to let him know all my little places that I like. And each and every place I show him, I realized he falls in love with it. So, which means you have a completely common ground. He loves what I love what he loves, and which is great to see. And a little bit sad because of so many years lost where you actually could have had a friend, but because of the circumstances, it was always more or less impossible in the beginning, because he's Michael Kiske, I'm Andi Deris, and the band Helloween did not want to have him anymore. And I only knew the stories from Michael Wyckoff and from Marcus Groskopf in the beginning, which I know is always only 50%, but I never had a chance to listen to the other 50% of Michael Kiske's side to decide for myself who is wrong, who is right, or was there wrong and right, or was it just 2 idiots or 3 idiots who couldn't stand each other anymore? I don't know, you know. I've witnessed the same shit in my band, and I was always ready to say, look, I mean, it's always 50-50. I would never say, you asshole, because probably I made some mistakes, and it's always 50-50. That's what I think.
Eu aproveitei essa ocasião também para voltar um pouquinho no tempo com ele e perguntei sobre o The Time of the Oath, que foi o segundo álbum que ele gravou com o Helloween, em 1996, e pedi para que ele comentasse algumas lembranças sobre esse disco que está chegando ao seu 25º aniversário de lançamento, agora em 2021. Ele traçou um paralelo bem interessante com esse álbum e com o álbum anterior, o Master of the Rings, lançado em 1994, que esse sim foi a estreia de Andi Deris com o Helloween, e era como uma prova de fogo ali, onde, pelo menos na visão dele, se o pessoal não gostasse dessa nova formação, então nova formação do Helloween, com um novo vocalista e tudo mais, já seria o fim da banda, na visão dele, né? Se liga na resposta.
And the Master of the Rings was definitely something like, well, live or die. If the people love it, you're there. If the people hate it, that's it for Helloween. That was the real gambling with the devil, so to say. But then the Time of the Oath, because we knew that we are now having some success, then the Time of the Oath was just that relief album. You knew everybody went down smoothly. You had your golden and platinum records, so wow. And from that point of view, you just went into the studio and said, okay, whatever we did right, let's try to do it again. So, and I think what we did right was not to think about, is that song good enough? Is that song not good enough? Blah, 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 because you had no choice. For the Master of the Rings, there were only X amount of songs. There was only 2 weeks of time to get yourself ready for the studio, because the studio already was booked. And we had to record what we had. And we made the best out of it. And actually, that's more or less the vibe we brought in with the Time of the Oath. This is the songs we have. We like them. Don't make yourself fuzzy and crazy in the head that you would need more songs because you need this or that style or whatever. Just take what you have. We love it, so take it as your baby and try to raise it as good as you can. So, and this is actually the recipe that we work with. That's the songs or the ideas you have. If we like it, that's enough. Don't make yourself fuzzy in your head, because lots of people go crazy and think, oh, we have to do this and maybe that or blah, blah, blah. If you have enough songs, if it's 11 or 12 great songs, take them and cherish them and raise them up as good as you can, rather than record another 10 songs. Then at the end of the day, you have 20 babies and you are not able to raise them in a good way. You know what I mean? It's too much energy. Take what you have, cherish it, and make it as good as you can. I think that's a much better plan here. Cool. I mean, it's the same then. How could I ever be a good father if I had 10 kids? I mean, imagine I had 10 kids. Probably I would not even know the names of number 8 and 9 and 10. So, yeah. And because songs for me is always like babies. It's writing a song, I mean, probably you know that. If you have written a song, that does not mean that the song is finished with everything and the way you present it then on an album. Writing a song is just the beginning. So when you have written a song, then you have to work with your band to make it as good as possible with the abilities of your colleagues, of your bandmates. And I think that's much better than raising 20 babies, and you just don't have the time to actually go into each and every detail, which is a shame sometimes, because there are lots of song ideas I listen to from other people, and I think, okay, if you would have put in a little bit more love and a little bit more time, this could have become a fucking great song. Now it's only an okay song.
Ainda durante o bate-papo, eu pedi pro Andi Deris relembrar um pouquinho sobre Andre Matos, vocalista brasileiro de bandas como Angra, Xamã, Viper, tantos outros projetos também, que infelizmente nos deixou há 2 anos. Ele faleceu em junho de 2019 e ele tinha uma relação especial com o pessoal do Helloween, porque em 2003, quando o Xamã gravou o DVD Rito Alive, tanto o Andy quanto o Michael subiram ao palco e fizeram uma participação especial naquele show. Todo mundo tocou junto o grande hit do Helloween, Eagle Fly Free. Saca só a resposta do Andy.
I mean, for me it was horror. Even more horror than when Lem died, because when Lem died, I expected it. I'm a good friend with Michi D, the old drummer from Motorhead, and who now plays with the Scorpions. And because of Michi, I knew that Lem is not in a very good shape. So it was to be expected. But with Andre, I definitely did not expect Andre to pass away. So even more, he's even younger than myself. So you're getting like, when Andre is gone, will I be next? I was there with Waiki because we happened to be on promotion tour in Brazil. And as always, it was a pleasure. It's even Via Funchal, the old Via Funchal, which always is in my heart as the concert hall for me. I always loved it to death in Sao Paulo. I liked to be there just for every band. I mean, I do remember when Jamiroquai was giving us a call if we would like to visit him in Via Funchal, and it's like, then there were so many concerts I visited in Via Funchal, so it for me it was like a second home. My own concerts I played there 4 times, I think, and I visited at least another 7 times with befriended bands who played there and watched the shows there. And then when Andre asked us to join, for me it was like, yeah, absolutely, definitely. I mean, first of all, it was a great honor because Angra is Brazil's metal band, and Andre was a great singer anyway, great songwriter, talent, musician. It's not only singing but also piano and guitar and lots of instruments. And we got to know each other like 12 or 13 years before that in Germany. Man, what can I say? Was one of the most friendly guys without star shit or whatever. He was just a good pal. I would compare it like with a good friend of mine, which is Timo from Stratovarius. Also super great singer, super nice person, great heart. I love him, and occasionally always likes to smoke a cigar with me in secret because singers shouldn't smoke. But you know, that's this warm feeling I always had with Andre. It was always great to be around him, and certainly great pleasure when Mikey and I were asked to join the concert in Via Funchal. It was a great evening, even though very sweaty.
As always.
As always. I do remember. Actually, I do remember when I went out of the car and wanted to go backstage into the concert hall to prepare. There was so many people standing there, suddenly shouting, "Andy, it's Andy, it's Andy." So I do remember that I was actually asked 3 times to finally come into the concert hall because I would have to go on stage soon. And I still was there writing autographs and making photos and talking with the people. And it was so fantastic. Yeah, it was a great night. And the party after that was actually very, very nice as well. Super down to ground, really relaxing. I love that. I mean, we couldn't actually party the way we wanted because we had to do all the interviews in the very next day. So, well, it was great. And I think 3 days later we met again. When we were back in Sao Paulo, 3 days later we met again with Andre. It was always great. I mean, whenever we were out there, like most of the times, we would be in the churrascarias and having 3 or 4 hours of super nice conversations, great meat, great drinks. So, yeah, quality time.
Mas ao fim da conversa, eu perguntei pro Andy com relação a planos do Helloween voltar ao Brasil com essa nova turnê, né, com esse novo álbum. Apesar, obviamente, de que não dá para fazer muitos planos com relação a turnês, porque a gente não sabe quando que as coisas vão voltar a funcionar da forma devida, seja no Brasil, seja em outros países do mundo. Perguntei a ele o que dá para dizer com relação a uma possível vinda do Helloween ao Brasil. Saca só a resposta dele.
Well, last question first, certainly. As soon as we can, we'll be back. As soon as you can actually dare to plan. But in these stupid times, you cannot plan the way you would like to. So, as much as I would love to tell you that we are coming then, or it's impossible. So, yes, we will come as soon as possible, that's a promise. But when that will be, that very much depends on politics and pandemics and all that shit, as we know nowadays.
Ainda durante essa pergunta, eu quis saber dele também com relação a essa conexão maluca que o Helloween tem com o Brasil. O Helloween já fez mais de 40 shows aqui no país, entre 1996 e 2019, e o Andy estava em todos esses shows, né? Já que a primeira turnê do Helloween no Brasil foi já com o Andi Deris no vocal, em 96. Quis saber dele o que ele tem como impressão dessa conexão louca que surgiu aí entre Helloween e os fãs brasileiros, e ele se recordou muito de uma das primeiras apresentações que o Helloween fez por aqui, a primeira apresentação deles em São Paulo especificamente, né, que foi no festival Philips Monsters of Rock em 96, e ele até comenta que naquela ocasião o Helloween estava substituindo uma outra banda, só que ele não conseguia se lembrar qual banda era essa, e eu prometi a ele que faria essa pesquisa, até pesquisei, mas não consegui encontrar também qual seria essa banda que cancelou esse show meio que de última hora e fez o Helloween ser escalado. Saca só a resposta.
Put it that way, it started super crazy because we'd been asked 1996 to join the Monsters of Rock because there was which band couldn't play? There was a band which played and they couldn't because somebody got sick.
Oh, I can't remember that. I remember that you guys were there, but...
Yeah. And then they asked us if we would like to jump in. And I remember that for the people there, it was in the old, not in the old stadium, in the stadium in Sao Paulo, Philips Monsters of Rock, that was.
Yeah. I think it was at Morumbi or Pacaembu, one of the oldest stadiums we have here in São Paulo.
A white stadium, super nice. Nevertheless, we went on stage and the people, I think the majority of the people just realized, oh, suddenly it's Helloween, because it was a very short announced show for us. We jumped in for, and it's a shame I don't remember which band was supposed to play instead of Helloween. Friggin' hell.
I'll do some research after that.
But nevertheless, I think the majority of the people were not prepared. Suddenly there was the announcement, well, please welcome from Germany, Helloween. And it was like 10 seconds, silence. And suddenly the whole stadium exploded because the majority of the people were not expecting us. That's what I think. And then we started with We Burn from the Time of the Oath. And I really remember, this was like fireworks. Everywhere you looked at, the people were like exploding. It was the greatest welcome ever, I have to say, because of that combination. Surprise, it's Helloween. They've been nuts. They were not on the bill. And probably because in that very moment we had, without knowing, lots of success going on in Brazil, but we didn't know that. So we just went there and thought, yeah, cool, great. Finally have a chance to play in Brazil. And then there was this super welcome, because actually we never realized that Helloween was big in Brazil. Never. And from that point on, Brazil was definitely always on the list forever in the future. Yeah, perfect. But I think Brazil also was the initiative start for South America for us. Because Brazil was going so crazy about it, I think that's how we were suddenly able, with the Brazilian backup, to conquer South America. Without Brazil, I don't know if it would have made these big waves that we suddenly had, because it just took another half year. 6 months later, suddenly everybody in South America was talking about us. But I think the initial start was definitely Brazil. So you lighted the bomb.
E seguindo esse gancho dessa relação maluca do Helloween com o Brasil, eu perguntei ao Andi Deris sobre um fã brasileiro que ele eventualmente cita em algumas outras entrevistas. Esse fã, segundo ele, iria ter um filho e iria colocar o nome do filho de Andi, em homenagem ao próprio Andi Deris. Tamanho fanatismo desse cara com relação ao Helloween, especificamente à fase do Helloween com o Andi. Só que aí, segundo o Andi, esse fã descobriu no meio do processo da gravidez que ele teria uma filha, uma menina. Então, ao invés de colocar o nome de Andi, esse fã, segundo ele, teria colocado o nome da filha de Deris, né? Agora ele comenta aí um pouco com relação a isso.
Well, I think he thought about Doris. For me, it's a mixture. I'm super honored, certainly, and to the same time, my ego tells me I'm proud. So I like it. But then again, it's to the same time, I think that's a big question. Will she appreciate it in the future? So I don't know. Me as a father of a son, I'm not sure if my son would appreciate the fact that I would call him, I don't know, Paul because of Paul Stanley, or Rob because of Rob Halford, or even more, if he would be a girl, he suddenly would be called Paula or Roba.
Paula is a very common name here in Brazil, but only
Paula,
here.
but I'm not sure if he would be all right with the fact that he's just named Paula, or she's just named Paula because I like Paul Stanley. So, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And even more that my name Deris is definitely not a name like Doris. So it's, but then again, why not? A friend of mine, he told me, but you know, Deris sounds like a surname. So it's definitely a name you would call somebody like Joe, James, Deris. It sounds like that. I said, okay, from that point of view, you may be right, but I'm not objective on that one because it's my name. But if you explain it like that, maybe it's okay. It sounds good, but for me, it's a bit, wow. I'm honored, yes, but to the same time, I have that question mark. Are you sure you want to do that?
Esse fã é o Júlio César, que era tão fanático pelo Helloween que ele teve uma filha e essa filha foi nomeada, foi batizada de Andi Deris. Só que o Andi com Y no final, ao invés de I, conforme a grafia usada no nome artístico do Andi Deris, vocalista do Helloween. Esse fã, inclusive, ele tem uma história muito peculiar, porque ele era fanático pelo Helloween, especialmente ali nos idos da década de 90, só que em 2002 ele teve uma conversão religiosa e a partir daí ele se distanciou, ele se afastou do Helloween, inclusive queimando toda a coleção que ele tinha de discos, de itens colecionáveis ali em geral, relacionados ao Helloween. A gente foi atrás desse fã e ele vai contar a história dele aqui brevemente, assim como a história da filha dele, que é chamada Andi Deris.
Na verdade, assim, a minha primeira filha, a mais velha, a esposa decidiu colocar o nome de Mannequin. Já um nome raro, mas colocamos. Na segunda filha, combinamos que eu colocaria o nome. Quando a minha segunda filha nasce, eu tô alucinado por Helloween, cara. Eu falei, pô, cara, o meu ídolo é o Andi, né, cara? Então, Andi também casa no feminino, cabe no feminino, né? Foi quando eu falei assim para minha ex-esposa na época, posso colocar o nome dela? Vamos colocar o nome dela de Andi? Nossa, Andi? Eu falei, mas tem vários artistas, além do Andi, do Helloween, tem vários artistas que se chamam Andi, né? Vamos colocar, bonito. Então vai. Aí a gente pegou e liberou e colocou o nome, entendeu? Foi difícil na época para aprovar no cartório, tanto Mannequin como Andi, eu tive que provar que tinha fontes, essas coisas, isso na época, né? Minha filha não gosta de metal, né? Inclusive ela é cristã também, mas ela ama o nome dela. Graças a Deus, até aí foi tudo bem.
Então é isso, galera. Espero que vocês tenham curtido a entrevista. Aproveito para lembrar vocês que esse novo álbum do Helloween, que também é intitulado Helloween, ele vai ser lançado já agora, nessa sexta-feira, dia 18 de junho. É a data em que ele estará liberado em todas as plataformas digitais. E aproveito também para pedir sua inscrição, sua curtida, seu comentário aqui no vídeo. E lembro também a vocês que outras entrevistas e outros conteúdos bem legais vão ser publicados aqui no canal. O canal finalmente está de volta. Então é isso. Obrigado, um abraço a todos vocês. Valeu!